Welcome to the Prioritizing Prevention Translating Science to Practice podcast. Our goal is to prioritize prevention conversations that matter. Our topic for today is Strengthening School Partnerships for Effective Prevention, with special guest Lauren Davis. Now here's our host, Holly Raffle.
Welcome back to the Prioritizing Prevention podcast. We are thrilled to kick off our third season, and we want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this journey. We've learned so much over the past 2 seasons, and we can't wait to share more knowledge and insights with you on the episodes to come. This podcast is hosted by the Ohio Center of Excellence for Behavioral Health Prevention and Promotion. My name is Holly Raffle, and I have the privilege of serving as the faculty director of the center. Because this episode focuses on prevention in the preschool through 12th grade education sector, I think it's important for me to share that I started my career teaching 9th grade health in Ohio's public school system. So just a little disclosure there. Now, prevention in schools. It's a big topic, and from my experience, one that often gets oversimplified. We tend to think about programs in schools, but really it's about understanding what schools are actually dealing with. They're facing huge pressures, complex situations. It's not easy. What looks like pushback on a new idea might be about something much deeper, maybe a lack of resources, changing priorities, or even just the fact that everyone's exhausted. The truth is, schools can't do prevention alone, and they shouldn't have to. Real progress in prevention means building strong partnerships with community organizations, prevention professionals, and other key players who can offer the resources, training, and support that make a real difference. Speaking of key players, we're thrilled to welcome Lauren Davis to the podcast today. Lauren is a behavioral health and wellness coordinator at Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Health Services, working directly with students at St. Bernard Elmwood Place High School. She's a master's level social worker and an OCPSA, a certified prevention specialist assistant, and her background is impressive. She's worked in all sorts of settings, from early intervention for substance use and HIV at the University of Cincinnati's emergency department to adult mental health therapy and even open access mental health diagnosis. Now she's sharing her passion on the well-being of adolescents and young people living in Southwest Ohio. Welcome, Lauren. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Holly. I'm really excited to be here today.
So, Lauren, your bio gives us a great overview of your experience and your expertise, but we always like to go a little deeper and get to know our guests on a more personal level. Your bio tells us what you do, but I'm curious, what do you love about what you do?
I think that this role specifically marries the things that I love about social work and understanding individuals on a treatment and intervention level with the things that I love about the way that our systems function and our upstream prevention opportunities when we get kiddos and individuals at a younger age and are able to kind of provide those resources early. So I think it's a great fit for where I started, and it's a great fit for where resources are kind of going and moving towards that prevention instead of intervention or treatment sector.
I love hearing when people just kind of talk openly about the driving force behind their work. And it's so inspiring to hear about that driving force behind yours. I'm a systems person as well. And it's always interesting to hear once people get that systems bug where their career takes them to. Now, beyond your professional life, what are some things that make you you? What are some of the interests or hobbies that you enjoy outside of work?
I love to read. So that's been something that's been really great with the cold, recent weather in Ohio. And I have started to collect a lot of mid-century home decor. So I've been finding myself spending the cold time when I need to get out of my house at antique malls and little vintage stores, picking up some fun stuff. So
Oh, that's super fun. So are you restoring it or just collecting it? Some of both?
a little bit of both. My dad and I took on a project this winter to restore an antique table that had been in the family. And then I found a table later at a vintage store that was a great deal that's not working. So I've been spending a bunch of time on Reddit and YouTube trying to connect with people to troubleshoot why it's not working and fix it. And then I've just been into the like 50s swung vases, the colorful glass. So a little bit of everything.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing those personal details. It really helps our listeners and me get to know you better and connect with you before we dive into this conversation. Well, listeners, we've got something exciting planned for 2025. Our center's newsletter is diving deep into the community, highlighting a different sector each month with our theme, What's Your Prevention Message? This February, we're focusing on something incredibly important, our schools. We all know that strong schools are essential for thriving communities, but let's stop and think about why. School administrators and educators are in a unique position. They're not just teaching, they're laying the groundwork for individual growth, shaping healthy habits, and opening doors for all children to succeed. They're also vital for building strong families and resilient communities, providing resources for parents and caregivers, attracting new families, and fostering social connection. And all of these things are absolutely critical for preventing substance use and promoting mental, emotional, and behavioral health. So, with that background in mind, Lauren, I'm curious about your thoughts on what makes schools particularly well suited for reaching youth and adolescents with prevention messages.
I think that schools are just an amazing resource when we think about the time that our adolescents spend throughout their day. They are with us in my building from about 7:45 to 2:30 every day, and that's the majority of that kiddo's time during the week is spent with us. So, we truly have a captive audience of adolescents in our buildings that are there pretty consistently where we can reach them with information that is accurate, that is refined for their age group, and that really targets the needs that we know that they're experiencing from larger level surveying and from kind of just our personal viewpoint that we have of the students in the building. We know that concerns like bullying or social media use and other things are coming up. So we can reach them where they're at during the day and provide them with some tactics to reduce the strain on their system.
Absolutely. And in your role as a behavioral health and wellness coordinator, how do you begin building or expanding a relationship with a school district or a school?
I'm not 100% sure that anyone has the perfect strategy for doing that yet. Um, but I think that it's hearts and minds oriented first. Like we come in with this knowledge and these interests and these lofty goals for districts and this evidence base that we have accumulated. And districts are made up of people. Our students are people, our teachers are people, and they have their own emotional needs and their personal needs that have to get met throughout the day too, and being able to come in and show them that you are also a person and that you recognize their humanity first and their role in the district before you have edicts or responsibilities that you're asking them to contribute to. Super important. And taking time to integrate yourself into that community as much as you can. Um, I think when I first got to the building with a grant having kind of a short timeline, it was really tempting to roll out this like long list of really cool things we could get done if we just did it really quickly. Um, and I got the opportunity to sit in classrooms and listen to teachers talk about the concerns that they had with their students and sit in the office and talk to the admin staff and the principals. And I think that that really paved the way for a stronger relationship that was built on understanding and not just on, these are the expectations that the grant has for me while I'm here. And I'd love to get it done tomorrow if we all could.
Absolutely. Lauren, thank you for prioritizing kind of relationship over your to do list. And as I was listening to you talk, I noticed that it seems like listening is one of the most important tools in your toolkit. So, how do you ensure that you're truly listening to the needs and challenges and strengths of school administrators, educators, and students before you offer solutions?
I think about the strategic prevention framework when I think about listening because there's that constant assessment and needs recognition that's going on in the strategic prevention framework. because you don't want to implement anything that's not going to be targeted towards those individual needs. And I think that meant that I had to take a step back, put the list of things that would be great down, and just spend a lot of time listening and recording information about what those individuals were seeing, because it's information that I couldn't have had. I don't have that lived experience of being in that district for 10 years. I don't have the student experience. I'm certainly not an admin who has to make these high level decisions and report to the state. So framing it in a way where I'm not the expert, I'm just here to help, and I want to know what's important to you before we make any moves at all, I think helped their comfort level, and it helped my ability to get great information from them about what they needed, and then be able to link them to information that was relevant and not just available.
Absolutely. And I'm hearing you kind of allude to a lot of multiple situations, but it really helps our listeners if you can give an example from your experience. So, could you share an example where listening first and acting second helped shape a more effective partnership?
I think the best example that I can provide is around prevention programming specifically that we were trying to implement in the building. We have a lot of amazing prevention resources available online, a lot of great tier one programming, and there is a lot of it that's free. So it's easy, especially in districts where we struggle with finding the financial resources to pay for expensive things, to just come in and kind of put the first free thing in place if we need something. And when we were looking at prevention programming, we really wanted to offer something tier one for all of our seventh graders. And I personally could have approached with this laundry list of different options that we could offer. And instead, we took the time as a counseling team, which is made up of myself, our school counselor, and our building administration, to sit down and figure out what was going to be most effective for our kiddos and what targeted the needs that they had. And we were able to move forward with the Botvan Life Skills curriculum. Taking that data down and getting together and talking first as a group of stakeholders before we made decisions was very helpful for moving forward with our tier one prevention programming in the building.
Lauren, thank you so much for being super specific because I think it helps our listeners actually get there and be in your shoes and see where your relationship centric method of working with schools and listening first and acting second does pay dividends. I'm going to ask us to kind of pause our conversation for a minute because not all of our folks who listen to the podcast are working in schools. So could you just give a little brief explanation about what tier one means for our folks who may not be familiar with that term?
I would love to, Holly, and everyone who has a background in education can come to the comments to correct my understanding because I am a social worker first and working in a school second. But the kind of layman's understanding that I have around the tiers in schools is that we have our tier one, which is the information we're providing to all of our kiddos that or adolescents, individuals in the buildings, and then we have our tier two, which is select information or resources that we're providing for individuals that have screened as having that need or in some other way indicated that that tier one was just not enough support. Finally, we have our tier three, which is targeted interventions for a smaller group of individuals that, again, were not able to be supported effectively by those first two tiers.
Absolutely. So for preventionists out there, what I'm hearing, it's more like universal, selective, and indicated.
Thank you for translating. Yes.
Yeah, would that be a good translation?
I think that's an excellent translation.
We did it together, right?
Yeah, I speak school language all day. So when I leave work, it's goofy to switch from school interpretation of prevention to prevention or social work interpretation of prevention.
Absolutely. And it's funny how we can have so many terms that mean the same thing. And oftentimes that's where listening first and acting second can be helpful, right? Because, sometimes we're talking about the same thing and don't even realize it.
Definitely. I think that helping them to understand that my goals align with their goals, they just have different fun graphics has been really great because at the end of the day, we're all trying to serve the students most effectively. And all of the different languages and types of graphics sometimes is a little bit confusing and unhelpful for our educators who don't have a lot of time to then go do prevention research and figure out what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And that's a wonderful segue into kind of this next topic I want to talk about. So, in my prevention practice, which is mostly community based prevention, I always like to, tell people if you've been to one Ohio community, you've been to one Ohio community. So, I'm curious if, from your perspective, is the same is true for school districts and sometimes even schools within a district?
I think that would be very fair to say. I am only experienced in the district that I currently work in, but I am part of this network of other prevention providers who are also behavioral health and wellness coordinators under this Project Aware grant. And we come together about quarterly to talk about the things that are happening in our schools and exchange information about prevention programs and what's been effective. And I am always amazed when I leave those meetings at the array of different ways that schools across Ohio are supporting students. And they are completely different from anything we have come up with because that community is completely different. So, what I'm doing in my building or what my admin have said they needed or the data for our students does not look the same even to a building that is one zip code away from us. So, we especially as the state of Ohio can kind of sometimes hand things down, we are all interpreting and doing that prevention in the way that's most effective for that district. And it can take kind of a special lens and understanding to tailor the prevention to the kiddos and the district that you're in rather than just kind of picking whatever is available and implementing it.
Thank you, Lauren. I think you really kind of talked about that tension between that group of evidence based strategies that we have and then the role that community context or cultural relevance plays in our approach to working within the education sector, because both are really important. And I feel like you really highlighted that in your examples. So, we've talked about the importance of schools and prevention efforts, but building those strong school partnerships isn't always easy. It can be a real balancing act. Even with the best intentions, things can sometimes go sideways. So, Lauren, I'm sure you've had your share of experience navigating this complex landscape. And I'm curious, can you share a specific example from working with schools where something might have gone off course? And more importantly, what did you learn from it? And how did you adjust your approach to still reach your goal?
We had an opportunity when I first started in the district to restart a program that we had going for a while. And we were really excited about this program, and it was an evidence based prevention program. And we ended up with a new facilitator, and it gave me an opportunity to interface between the facilitator, which is from an outside organization, and our district to assist them with some relationship building and to translate for the facilitator around our building's needs. The individual came in and was struggling to understand the population of students that they were working with and some of the needs that the students would have around rapport building before being willing to move into kind of sharing their personal information or working on a deeper level with this facilitator. And I was able to kind of sit down with them and share about the demographics of our district and the needs within our district and provide some coaching around rapport building. So, playing games with our kids, bringing snacks and treats as kind of incentives for helping them to participate and get involved. And with that coaching, we were able to move forward and keep the students engaged in the prevention programming. And it also gave us an opportunity to build a stronger relationship with our community partner because we were able to be open with them and say, this is the feedback that we're getting from students around how they're feeling about the groups. And this is what we could do together to move forward and to make this a more pleasant experience for our students and a better experience for you as a facilitator because the kiddos are going to be more engaged and more willing to work with you.
Thanks for sharing that. And when I'm in kind of troubleshooting mode, I always think of the three Ps. Like, do I have a person issue? Do I have a program or project issue? Or do I have a process issue? And it really shows how you listened carefully to the feedback from the students and kind of put things together and said, you know what, it's not the program that's the issue, but maybe we have a person issue, but also the process and their approach with working to the students with the students as an issue. And we're able to come to a resolution pretty quickly to help everyone feel good about the prevention that was being delivered in the schools. So thank you for that. I appreciate your efforts and really being strategic about your coaching and resolving the issue in a way that everyone feels good.
Thank you. I think it's neat to be able to play that broker role in the schools, like not just to be providing the prevention, but also to be speaking between the schools and the community providers to help do some of that translating that we were talking about earlier, to help make it make sense in education language and make it make sense in prevention language.
Oh, I agree. And it's so helpful to hear about real world experiences. And that's why we're here on our podcast. So, for anyone who's listening, who's thinking, I want to do this in my community, meaning working with schools, what are some of the pearls of wisdom that you've picked up along the way? Like, where should people start? What are some key first steps in building those all important relationships?
I think that your janitor and your athletic director and whoever oversees building access are going to be your like first few stops in your time in schools, because it is about the relationships and the access that you have to the physical space at first. So I spent time chatting with people and listening about their families and about the community and their experiences in the school, and I think that those few individuals being interested in the work that I was doing and hearing what I was trying to accomplish for the community that they lived in made it a lot easier for me to continue to work and to even get let into the building on days when I wouldn't have usually been there. Or if I needed access to have food delivered for a free food distribution, having the janitor on my side to help me get the food through the special freight elevator was really great. Um, so relationships that aren't even necessarily direct relationships where you're going to be providing prevention services for students, but relationships that help you to fit into the fabric of the school building and help you to kind of communicate at a different level about the prevention aims that you have can be really supportive and helpful.
Absolutely. And I think it just shows that schools are communities and they're within communities. And prevention is all about building communities. And the role of the preventionist is to really think through how can I become part of this community, even if it's only, for my work day and I may not live here, but how can I be, an adopted part of the community as a person who works and really cares a lot about the youth and young people within it. Our listeners know that prevention work is a marathon, not a sprint, and I know that holds true in my career as well. For example, offering a program a few times or supporting a single policy isn't going to magically create lasting change, but those actions do matter. They help build a strong foundation for future success. So, Lauren, once you've gotten your foot in the door and you've built some momentum and you've built those relationships necessary for school based prevention, what are your tips for nurturing those relationships and keeping the energy going? So, how do you sustain those efforts and relationships over time?
I think constant communication is very helpful because there are times, like you mentioned, where you offer a program and it's not able to be started or it's not the right fit at the time, capacity isn't there. So it might not come to fruition, and that's totally okay. But keeping people in the loop about what you're attempting to bring to the school or what problems you're working on solving is very helpful, so they can see that you're still invested. And just because something didn't end up working out the way we were expecting doesn't mean that you're not still fully engaged and showing up every day to work for the students. And I also think that, again, continuing with that relationship building, if you go in and you build great relationships, which I'm fortunate to have amazing staff in the district that I work in who are very supportive of my role, even when there are challenges or I have additional needs or maybe have to make a request of someone, because I'm around every day and I'm listening to their concerns and their needs, they're flexible and helpful with me when I have ongoing things that I'm working on for their district and their kiddos. And I also am able to sit in the teachers' meetings weekly, which I know not everyone has the time or capacity to do regularly, but I think it's made a great difference with my staff to be able to literally check in with them once a week at a set time. How are these kids doing? Is there anything you're noticing that you need? Is there anything that I can be of assistance with? And even if it's not something prevention related, the most recent requests have been more around like self-care needs. So how do we I encourage middle through high schoolers to wear deodorant, shower, and brush their teeth? That's something that I can work on, that the teachers can see me in the hallway passing out that deodorant or chatting with kiddos about personal hygiene. And it's showing that investment, and it's keeping that door open and the communication open so that when there is a program that's the right fit or meets a need, they know this person cares. We're going to give it 100% investment and give it a try. And they're willing to be flexible with me and lift when needed.
So it's interesting. The common theme I'm hearing from your responses is relationships. So it doesn't surprise me that nurturing those relationships involves communication, right? Because communication is key to strong relationships. So I really heard that thread through our conversation. But I'm going to switch gears for a minute because as the prevention field has evolved, we're lucky to have access to many evidence based prevention initiatives. And some of them are developed right here in Ohio for Ohio schools. But with so many options, how do you help schools or other prevention professionals choose the right program at the right time for their specific community? And it could be program, policy, practice, initiative, kind of all of that. Just I've heard you talk about, timing is important. Just because it's not right now doesn't mean it's not ever. So, how do you navigate that landscape when you're choosing those prevention initiatives or interventions that you're working on?
Gently and collaboratively would be the two words that come to mind first. Um, Again, taking our enthusiasm and the knowledge that we have and setting it aside, and first assessing capacity, and the capacity, like you mentioned, being the time or the funding or the physical bodies in the building, making sure that everything is aligned with what the school is capable of doing, and really letting them know that you're not holding them to any expectation around doing something right now. So if we identify that vaping is a concern, I'm not saying we have to do this program tomorrow, but I'm going to let you know that it's free and it's out there, and I would love to help you implement it, and kind of planting those seeds when you can. Um, I think I've talked about vaping probably in every meeting I've had recently with individuals in the school district, letting them know that, hey, there's this great program out there that we would be interested in working on. And if it's able to move forward, that's awesome. And if it's not able to move forward right now or in the length of my grant, they have the information, and I'm being that bridge and broker for them and showing them that I hear the concern and that I'm offering something that could be a possible solution. Um, so just kind of keeping those pathways of information open for our staff.
Really, that's what schools do for students as well, right? Plant seeds, and they might not see what comes up in their classroom used immediately. It may be 5, 10 years down the road. And that's the way prevention works as well, right? It could be like, oh my gosh, remember Lauren at that meeting said there was a vaping program, and you could be off to your next school, right? And you'll never know that the seeds you planted came to fruition. So, really appreciate you, recognizing that it's your job to provide the options, and if they're the right fit, they're going to take flight.
The schools have a lot of different data that they have to pay attention to, and we have our own separate data and aims that we are looking for in prevention. So I'm not as concerned about your test scores. I want you to pass your classes, but you having all A's is not my priority. Um, and the school needs that data, and it needs the students to be functioning well academically. So marrying the information that we have about how prevention impacts our students as far as substance use behaviors or mental health or other needs with the data that we have about how prevention impacts academics is very helpful. And being willing to collect data or to see success however it needs to be framed for it to be helpful for the school. So I want information from the school and feedback from the school about if they feel the botman program is effective and how the students are speaking about it in class, if they are eager to go to group or resistant to go to group. And then also getting to talk with the kids has been great. I do talk to the majority of the students that are in any of our prevention groups at a time, and hearing, we want more games, or we want this to be more engaging, or it's hard right after lunch to be focused, is all information that we can use to better our programming and to make it more impactful for the students while they're enrolled.
And I love what you alluded to is defining success together and recognizing that my success definition is different from yours, but how do they work together is really essential for any partnership to be a success. And the fact that you're being so specific with your experiences allows your insight to really travel through to our listeners. And this conversation has been fantastic, Lauren, and we're running short on time, but I do want to squeeze in a few quick questions that are rapid fire style. Just your gut reaction to these. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
So, would you rather focus on changing school policy or shifting school culture?
That is interesting, and I could talk at length about that. I would have to say school culture would be the one that would be most important to me as a person who's in buildings.
So, when you're working with school administrators, would you rather do email updates or face to face meetings?
I love a chat. Emails are avoidable. I know that because sometimes I avoid my own email inbox. But I like when I have that FaceTime because you're seeing their reactions to the information that you're sharing. Maybe they make an offhanded comment and you're able to make a connection there for them immediately. And I think also just reinforcing that I'm a presence in your building 5 days a week. So they know that I'm there. If I'm seeing them in person, it's connecting with them that I'm as invested and as present as they are for the students.
Thank you. And finally, our tried and true question. We ask this to all guests. So you have a big decision here. And if I forget to ask it, I get emails telling me that I didn't ask this question. So you are reaching into that candy dish. Are you looking for a plain or peanut M&M?
Peanut M&Ms all the way. Peanut butter and chocolate is the perfect combination.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for sharing your time and experience with me and our listeners. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on the Ohio Center of Excellence for Behavioral Health Prevention and Promotion podcast, Prioritizing Prevention. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help support the podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star rating, sharing it with others, posting about it on social media, or setting the podcast to automatically download on your favorite podcast channel. Doing so helps us reach more listeners and keeps the conversation going. To catch all the latest from the center, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and Facebook at OH Prevention COE, or visit us at preventioncoe.ohio.gov to sign up for our monthly newsletter. If you missed our last podcast, it was with Dr. April Schweinhart, Senior Research Scientist at Pyre, and Riley Jones, Program Manager at Prevention First. During our conversation, we identified key aspects of strategic planning and professional development for prevention professionals. We also discussed essential skills, strategies for overcoming career challenges, and tools for professional growth to support prevention work in 2025 and beyond. This podcast was produced by Ivory Lloyd at Global Insight Productions and is supported by Ziyu Zhang and Jen Morrell at the Ohio Center of Excellence for Behavioral Health Prevention and Promotion. Thank you all for your behind-the-scenes work to get positive prevention content out into the world.
This has been the Prioritizing Prevention podcast. For more episodes, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Apple Music, and many more. This program is funded by the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. For more information about us, please visit preventioncoe.ohio.gov. Thank you for listening.